The great hall of the alien council was wide and bright, its walls made of shining crystal that caught the light and sent it dancing across the curved ceiling. Every sound echoed in the space, the soft hum of the energy lights above, the faint rustle of alien bodies shifting in their seats, the low whisper of strange voices speaking in 100 different languages. Yet all eyes were fixed on one thing at the center of the floor. There it sat, the puzzle box, a small object, yet heavy with mystery. Shaped like a cube but with uneven edges, its surface covered in glowing lines that shifted like water on glass. It was older than any star mapped in the known sky, older than any empire that still stood. And the story went that it had been made by a race that had vanished long before any of them were born. It had been found drifting in the dark between galaxies, inside the wreck of a ship so ancient its metal crumbled at a touch, and from that day, every species had tried to solve it, but all had failed. Now it was the human's turn. Daniel Raines, a man who looked small among the tall alien forms. He walked slowly across the hall, his boots striking the crystal floor with sharp, clear echoes that seemed too loud in the quiet space. Hundreds of alien eyes followed him, some cold, some curious, some mocking. He could hear their whispers, their strange clicks and hisses. They spoke about the human who dared to try. They spoke about how fast he would fail, how quickly the box would reject him, how it would be just another name in the long list of the defeated. In the high seat, the alien leader leaned forward, a tall figure with skin like black glass and eyes like molten gold. His voice rang through the hall, smooth and cruel. Human, you may touch the box, you may attempt the challenge, but when you fail, you will leave. You will not speak of what you have seen here. Daniel said nothing. His eyes were on the puzzle. His mind was calm but sharp. He had seen something like this before long ago, in a place he should never have been, a place where the air had tasted of metal and the light had been wrong, and deep inside him there was a memory he had tried to forget, a memory of a similar cube glowing under his hand, warm and alive. He stopped before the stand, the box resting on its surface as if it had been waiting for him, its light pulsing slowly, almost like breathing. He could feel the faint vibration of power coming from it, and for a moment, he thought it was looking at him. If a box could look, if a thing without eyes could choose. The crowd shifted, some aliens clicking with amusement, others leaning forward in interest. A few even began to exchange bets, coins and credits passing from hand to hand. The air was thick with their confidence that the human would fail just like all the rest. Yet Daniel's expression did not change. His breathing was steady, his steps sure as he reached out his hand. The instant his fingers touched the surface, the light flared bright. Sharp gasps filled the hall. The box shifted under his touch, its panels moving, its lines twisting into new shapes, the glow turning from pale blue to deep gold, the hum growing louder. It was as if the thing had woken from a long sleep and recognized him. The alien leader rose to his full height, his voice sharp now. Impossible. The box responds to no one. But Daniel did not answer. He let his fingertips trace the strange symbols that rose from the surface like liquid metal. The shape seemed familiar, not from books or maps, but from dreams, or from a memory buried so deep he could not say if it was his or something older. The whispers grew louder, the air heavier. Some aliens stood, their eyes bright with fear or greed. Daniel knew they had no idea what the box really was. They thought it was only a puzzle, a toy of some lost race. But deep inside he knew the truth. This was not a game, not a challenge for sport. This was a lock, and locks always had something behind them. He felt the faintest shift under his hand, a slow turning like gears inside a giant machine, and the light brightened again, bathing his face in gold. And then something happened that made him freeze in place. A voice, low and deep, not from the hall, not from any speaker or mouth, but from inside his mind. It spoke in words he did not know yet somehow understood. It said only one thing. You have been chosen. The golden light spread across the alien hall like a living wave casting shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in unnatural shapes on the curved crystal walls. The once calm air now felt charged heavy with something that was not quite heat and not quite sound, as if the very air itself was aware of what had just happened and was holding its breath. Daniel kept his hand on the surface of the puzzle box, feeling the soft vibration rise through his fingers into his arm and then into his chest, until it felt like his heart was matching the rhythm of the thing. Before him his mind was sharp, but part of him could not ignore the faint tremor in his breathing, for this was not the first time something alien had spoken directly into his thoughts, but it was the first time it had spoken with such certainty. The words "you have been chosen" still echoed in his skull, not fading like a memory, but lingering, as if the voice was still there waiting for him to answer. He did not speak. He was not sure he could. The hall around him was far from silent. Now the crowd of alien watchers had begun to react, their voices rising in tones of disbelief, in clicks and growls and musical notes that carried tension through the air. Some shouted in their native tongues, while others began to argue with their neighbors about what this meant for the old records. Clearly stated, the box had never responded to any living being, not once in all the centuries since it was found drifting in the dark. From his place on the high seat, the alien leader leaned forward, eyes of molten gold locked on the human. His voice was deep yet sharp, slicing through the noise of the hall. "Human, step away from the artifact now. It is not for you." Daniel ignored him, his gaze fixed on the surface before him, as the glowing lines began to shift again, their patterns bending into new shapes that did not seem random, and in those shapes he could see hints of meaning, fragments of symbols he thought he knew from somewhere he could not name. The box pulsed once, then again, each time a little faster and a little brighter, the glow painting the floor in liquid gold, the hum deepening into a sound that Daniel felt more than heard, like a low note held in the bones of the hall itself. The panels shifted, and something like a breath passed through the air, the sound of metal on metal, and yet not metal at all. The alien scientists who had been standing at the edge of the circle now moved closer, their hands holding strange devices that captured light and sound, their eyes unblinking as they studied every flicker of the box. One of them, a thin creature with silver skin, muttered in a language Daniel did not understand, but the tone was unmistakable. This was not study, this was hunger. The voice in his mind returned, and this time it was clearer. It spoke not in riddles, but in command. "Daniel, listen. There is little time. The locks are old. They will not hold forever. The one who opens them must be ready." Daniel's fingers hovered above the lines on the surface. He did not know if he was ready, but he knew he had to try. Something deep inside told him that the box had not chosen him by accident. He thought of the wreck he had once found far beyond the trade routes, the silent corridors filled with dust and shadows, and the strange device he had carried away that had burned his hand and etched symbols into his dreams for years. Perhaps this was its twin, or its master. The crowd grew restless, a ripple of movement passing through the tiers of seats as some aliens rose and began to leave, while others pressed forward to see more. The alien leader spoke again, his voice louder, harsher. "Step away, or be removed." But Daniel felt the vibration in his arm change, and somehow he knew that if he broke contact, now the box would close itself again, perhaps forever, and whatever it was trying to tell him would be lost. He placed both hands on the surface. The heat was stronger now, but not burning. The glow wrapped around his fingers, spilling over his skin like light made. Liquid symbols began to rise from the surface, hovering in the air in front of his face, each one turning slowly, as if waiting for him to understand them. They were not letters, not in any language he knew, yet his mind offered meaning without effort, as though the knowledge had always been there, hidden under the noise of his thoughts. He realized the symbols formed a path, not a map of a place, but a sequence, a set of actions. The first was simple: turn the left panel 3 times, then press the lower edge. The second was harder, involving shapes that shifted even as he looked at them. The voice urged him quickly: "The locks are shifting on their own." Daniel's fingers moved without hesitation, and the box responded with a deep chime that rolled through the hall, making the crystal walls shiver. The crowd gasped again. Some stepped back, as if afraid that sound alone might harm them, but the alien scientists only leaned closer, their devices glowing brighter as they recorded every motion. A section of the box rotated on its own, clicking into a position no one had seen before, revealing an inner surface covered in even more symbols. These were sharper, more angular, and each one shimmered with a different hue, like fragments of light trapped in stone. The hum grew into a steady tone that made the air in Daniel's lungs feel heavier. The voice was almost a whisper: "Now the first seal is broken. You must not stop. Do not listen to them. They will try to end this before you reach the last lock." From the high seat, the alien leader gave a sharp gesture, and several guards stepped forward, their bodies covered in heavy armor, their weapons humming with power. They approached in slow steps, uncertain of what might happen if they came too close to the glowing box. Daniel did not move. He kept his hands steady, his eyes on the shifting symbols, knowing that one mistake might undo everything. Another command formed in his mind, this one more complex than the last. He turned a panel in one direction, then another, then pressed his palm flat against the side. The box answered with another chime, lower this time, but longer, and the glow deepened until the whole hall was bathed in gold, the floor itself reflecting the light like still water. The guards hesitated, their weapons still raised, but their eyes drawn to the light. Daniel could feel heat building under his palms, the surface alive with movement, like 100 tiny gears all turning at once. The voice was fading now, but its last words before silence chilled him to the bone. The second seal is waking. What comes next will change everything. The final click of the second seal echoed like the toll of some ancient bell, and the floor beneath the stand trembled, sending small ripples through the light that covered it. The crowd fell silent, every eye locked on the human and the artifact. The alien leader did not speak this time, his gaze unblinking, as if he too was unsure of what would follow. The box shifted one more time on its own, the panels rearranging into a new form, a perfect sphere of light, floating just above the stand, its glow so intense it seemed almost solid. Daniel lowered his hands, but the sphere hung in the air, turning slowly, as if studying him. Then, with a sudden flash, it projected an image into the center of the hall, an image of something vast and dark moving silently through the cold black of space. Its shape, impossible to measure, its size beyond reason. The sphere spoke in a voice that all could hear, not just Daniel, one word that filled the hall with weight and made the air seem thin. Hurry. The image of the vast black shape still hung in the air above the sphere, its edges rippling like smoke, yet never fading. Its sheer size made even the tallest aliens in the hall seem small as children, and though it did not move, Daniel could feel that it was alive, that it was waiting, and that whatever it was, it had seen him. The crowd had fallen into a hush, now the earlier whispers of amusement and bets replaced with the tight silence of fear, their eyes flicking from the image to the human, who still stood at the stand, hands at his sides, chest rising slowly, as if each breath was a careful choice. He could feel the pull of the thing in the image, like gravity tugging at his mind. Then, without warning, the voice returned, not through the sphere, but inside his skull again, sharp and clear as though it had been standing at his ear the whole time. Daniel, you must listen. What you see is not far from here, and it is not sleeping. The locks hold it at bay, but only barely. Each one you open draws it closer to waking, and yet the locks are breaking on their own. If you do nothing, it will be free, without a guide, without a keeper, and it will not stop. Daniel's throat was dry. He wanted to speak, to ask the questions that burned in his mind, but he kept silent, knowing the moment he gave the aliens any sign of weakness, they would move against him. The alien leader's eyes of molten gold were locked on him, but there was something different now, not just anger or command, but caution, as though even he did not understand what was happening. Around the edges of the hall the guards stood tense, their weapons raised, but their eyes wide. The golden glow from the sphere painted their armor in warm light, yet it seemed to make them colder, somehow, each one waiting for the order to strike, but not eager to be the first to move closer. The voice in Daniel's head spoke again. You have seen part of this before, have you not? The derelict ship, the object. You carried the marks it left in your mind. They were fragments of this design scattered across the void like pieces of a broken chain. We placed them long ago, so that one day someone might remember, someone might find the way here. Daniel closed his eyes for a heartbeat, and the memory surged unbidden. The cold corridors of the wreck, floating silent in the dark, the faint hum of power in a room long untouched, the small cube glowing faintly on a pedestal, dust drifting through the beam of his helmet light, his hand reaching for it without thought, the searing heat in his palm, and the dreams that followed for years, dreams of strange lights and shifting patterns that made no sense until now. He opened his eyes to find the sphere had changed its image, fading into a swirl of symbols, like those on the puzzle box. Before they had lifted from its surface, they spun slowly in the air, each one pulsing faintly in turn, and as they moved, he could hear faint tones matching the light, forming a rhythm that was almost like speech, almost like breathing. The voice said, these are the keys to the next seal, but you must decide now whether you will continue. The locks are not here to protect you, they are here to protect what lies beyond, and the others in this hall will not understand that. They will see only power, only the chance to use what they cannot control. Daniel glanced up at the tiers of alien faces. Some watched him with suspicion, others with greed, and still others with a fear they could not hide. He knew the voice was right. None of them would care what the thing in the image was or what it wanted. If they thought they could turn it into a weapon, they would try without hesitation. The sphere drifted slightly closer to him, the light intensifying until it almost hurt to look at it. The voice in his mind softened. Daniel, if you open the next seal, you will bind yourself to this chain. You will carry it as long as you live, and there will be no turning away. The alien leader rose from his seat, stepping down from the high platform, each movement slow but deliberate. His voice carried across the hall. Human, the council commands you to step away. Now you do not understand the danger, but we do. Leave the artifact, and you may walk out alive. Defy us, and you will not. Daniel could feel the tension coiling tighter. With each passing moment, the guards shifted their stance. The scientists at the edge of the circle moved their devices to capture every detail. And somewhere in the upper tiers a murmur began to build, low and rising like distant thunder. He kept his gaze on the sphere, his mind racing with the voice's warning. The symbol spinning in the air shifted again, this time forming a shape, like a spiral turning inward, each curve marked with a different light. The voice whispered, "This is the path, follow it, and the seal will break. But if you hesitate, they will take the box, and the chance will be lost forever." Daniel stepped forward, placing his hands into the light of the symbols. They wrapped around his fingers, warm and sharp like sunlight. Through a lens, the hall reacted instantly. The guards taking a step forward, the alien leader raising a hand to stop them, his molten eyes narrowing. The crowd's murmurs rising to sharp cries as they realized he was about to continue. The first movement came to him easily, his hands twisting the invisible spiral in the air, and with each turn the sphere's hum grew louder. The second movement was harder, the symbols shifting even as he tried to match them. But some instinct older than thought guided him, the memory of the other cube, the patterns that had haunted his dreams now falling into place with perfect clarity. The voice's tone was urgent now. "The lock is weakening, the shape will resist. You do not stop." Daniel felt the pull in his arms grow heavier, as if the light itself had weight. The final movement required both hands pressing together, forcing the spiral to close in on itself. And with a sound like distant thunder, the sphere flared bright white. For a breathless moment the hall was bathed in blinding light. When the glow faded, the second seal was gone, the sphere's surface now covered in deep cracks of light, as if something inside was pressing against it, trying to break free. The crowd was silent, the air thick with heat and the faint scent of something burning. The voice was faint now, but the words struck deep. "You have done it, Daniel. The next seal is the last. When it opens, there will be no barrier left. You will stand before what waits, and you must decide if it will walk free or remain forever beyond the lock." The alien leader stood, frozen eyes fixed on the sphere. Then slowly, he looked at Daniel, his expression unreadable, but his voice quiet enough that only Daniel could hear. "You have no idea what you are doing, human, and yet you may be the only one who can finish it." Daniel did not answer. He could feel the sphere's light pulsing in time with his heartbeat, the cracks widening with each beat, and deep inside his mind the voice whispered again, softer than breath, "Hurry." The cracks of light across the sphere spread like rivers of molten gold, moving in silence along its curved surface, each one glowing with a heat that could be felt even at a distance. The alien council hall was no longer just tense. It was on the edge of something no one there had ever seen or imagined. The air carried a strange pressure, like the deep before a storm, heavy and close against the skin. Daniel stood before the sphere, his breathing slow yet deliberate, his eyes fixed on the shifting light, as if nothing else in the hall existed. He could hear the faint murmur of the alien crowd above the ring of guards, but it was the voice in his mind that held him anchored, speaking now in a tone that was both command and warning. "Daniel, the first test begins. It is not for your hands alone, it is for your mind and for the memory you carry." The golden light from the cracks swirled inward, then burst outward in a sudden ripple, forming a floating lattice of symbols around the sphere. They were sharper than before, each edge gleaming like a blade, some turning fast, others slow, forming patterns that dissolved and rebuilt themselves in the span of a heartbeat. The sphere pulsed once, and the voice returned, softer yet urgent. "If you wish to pass, you must place them in order. The wrong shape will close the seal. Forever the right shape will open the path." Daniel's hands hovered in the light, his mind racing through the dreamlike memories of symbols burned into him years ago. The first one was easy, a spiral of 3 lines crossing at the center. He touched it, and it drifted into place at the sphere's surface, locking with a low hum. The second came slower, a twisting curve, like a wave frozen mid-rise, and again the hum signaled it was correct. From the high seat the alien leader watched in silence, but his gaze was sharp, as if measuring not only what Daniel was doing, but what might happen if he succeeded. The scientists leaned closer, their devices drinking in the data of each movement, their eyes wide with greed and hunger to know what lay beyond the seals. The guards stood tense, their weapons shifting slightly, as if expecting the sphere to erupt at any moment. Daniel reached for the third symbol and felt the air grow warmer. The wrong choice will burn you, the voice said, and it was not a warning born of fear, but a fact. He hesitated, scanning the patterns, until one seemed to glow more faintly than the rest. He touched it, and the light accepted him, the hum deeper, now the lattice growing tighter around the sphere. But with the fourth the test changed, the symbols blurred into one another, becoming shapes that made no sense. His breath caught as he realized he could not see the answer. In memory the voice spoke again, calm and steady. Look beyond the shape. See the space it leaves. Daniel focused on the empty places between the lines, and there it was, the hidden form resting inside the absence. He reached into the light and pulled it forward, fitting it into the growing pattern. The hum vibrated through the floor and walls, making the crystal under his boots tremble. The crowd above began to shift uneasily, murmurs running like a cold wind through the tiers. They could see the lattice forming, and though they did not understand its meaning, they could feel it was leading to something none of them could control. The alien leader finally spoke, voice cutting through the air. Human, stop. Now this is not your place. Daniel ignored him. The fifth shape slid into position, the lattice flaring bright enough to cast long shadows against the far walls. The sixth shape required both hands twisting and pressing until it fit the strange groove that appeared in the sphere's surface. When it locked, the sphere itself turned with a slow grinding sound, like stone dragged across stone. The hum, now a deep vibration that seemed to live in the chest. The final shape floated before him. Unlike the others, it shimmered with shifting colors, refusing to settle on one form. The voice spoke one last time in the tone of judgment, not guidance. This is the heart. If you place it wrong, the lock will close forever. If you place it right, you will bind yourself to what waits beyond. Daniel hesitated for only a breath, then reached forward, letting the shifting form settle against his palm. It cooled instantly, fitting itself to him as if it had been waiting for his hand alone. When he placed it in the last open space, the lattice dissolved into pure light, flooding the hall in a wave that washed over everything. The guards staggered back, shielding their eyes. The scientists stumbled. The crowd gasped. The alien leader remained still, though his molten eyes reflected the blaze. The sphere's cracks widened into open seams, and with a sound like a slow heartbeat, it released a single object. It hovered between Daniel and the sphere, a small glowing shard no bigger than his hand, yet the heat from it was enough to make the air shimmer. It rotated slowly, showing a core of deep black inside the gold light. The voice said, take it, and the first test is complete, but once you hold it, the path will not let you go. Daniel reached out. The shard was light, almost weightless, but when his fingers closed around it, he felt something rush into him, like cold water and fire at the same time. Visions of places far beyond any map. The black shape from the earlier image, moving through the void, entire worlds watching from the dark, the feeling of being seen by something that did not blink. The shard sank into his palm, disappearing as though it had never been separate from him. The golden light around the sphere dimmed, but did not vanish, and the voice whispered, you carry the first key. The second test will come sooner than you think. The alien leader stepped forward, his shadow falling over the stand, his voice low but sharp. Human, give the artifact to us now. It is too dangerous for you. But Daniel did not answer. The shard's heat still in his hand, his mind still swimming with the images it had shown him. He stepped back from the sphere, but the air between him and the guards rippled with invisible force, a barrier holding them apart. The crowd had erupted into noise, now arguments in dozens of languages, fear in some voices, excitement in others. The scientists were already speaking to one another in rapid tones, planning what to do next. The alien leader's eyes narrowed, his hand lifting as if to give the order to break through the barrier, but he stopped as the sphere pulsed again, sending another wave of light across the floor. Daniel could feel it, the shift in the hum, the slow gathering of something deep inside the artifact. The next seal stirring in its sleep. He knew, without the voice having to say it, that the second test was already beginning, and this time it would not wait for permission from anyone. The last thing the voice said before fading into silence was not a command, but a truth. You are part of the chain now, Daniel, and the chain will pull until the end. The light in the hall shifted as if the walls themselves had changed color. The glow from the sphere no longer gold, but a deep burning red, like the last light of a dying star. The air was heavier, now pressing against skin and bone, each breath slower than the last. Daniel could feel the shard embedded in his palm, like a hidden ember, warm and constant, its pulse matching his own heartbeat. The crowd sensed the change too, their voices dropping into uneasy murmurs. The alien leader watching in silence, with molten eyes that reflected the red light, like fire trapped in stone. Without warning, the surface of the sphere split apart in a slow, deliberate movement, panels sliding back to reveal a new layer beneath, this one alive, with shifting strands of light weaving in and out like a nest of living veins. The strands twisted into patterns that formed for a moment, then unraveled into chaos. Again the voice returned to Daniel's mind, softer than before, but still steady. Daniel, the second lock is the maze of light. It changes with each breath. It cannot be broken, only followed. If you lose the path, the lock will close forever. Daniel stepped closer, feeling the heat of the sphere, the strands within moving faster as he approached, some stretching toward him, others curling away. The patterns had no beginning and no end, just endless movement, a living puzzle meant to frustrate and confuse. He reached out his fingers, brushing one of the strands, and instantly the hall shuddered. The guards stepped back, the crowd gasped, the strand flaring brighter at his touch. The voice spoke again, find the pulse in the maze. Daniel let his hand hover above the weaving light, his eyes following the flow of the strands until he began to see it, a rhythm, faint at first, then clearer, the same rhythm as the shard in his palm, the same rhythm as his heart. He moved his hand in time, with it tracing the path of one strand through the chaos. The sphere responded, the strand locking in place, its glow steadying as though anchored. From the high seat, the alien leader's voice rang out, you are tampering with something older than every empire here, human. You do not know what waits beyond the final lock. Step away. But Daniel kept his focus. The second strand revealed itself in the rhythm, crossing the first like a river over another. He guided it into place, and the hum of the sphere deepened, the heat rising around him. The scientists at the edge of the circle recorded every motion, their strange devices humming with their own energy. The guards shifted uneasily, some glancing at the alien leader for orders, others watching the sphere, as if afraid of what might happen when the maze was complete. Daniel felt the pull in his arm grow heavier. With each connection, the maze shrinking as more strands locked into place, but the last few twisted faster, resisting him at every turn. The voice urged him, the maze will fight you now. It knows you are close. Daniel's vision narrowed, the edges of the hall fading, until all he saw was the living weave of light. His hands moved quickly, catching each strand in the rhythm and fixing it before it could slip away. Sweat ran down his temple, but his breath stayed steady, the shard in his palm burning hotter until it felt like it might melt into his skin. The second to last strand snapped into place with a sharp sound like glass fracturing, and the entire maze slowed. The final strand floated before him, its glow dim, as if testing him, daring him to make the wrong move. He reached for it, but before his fingers could close, the alien leader raised his hand, and the guard surged forward, weapons glowing with deadly energy. The voice in Daniel's head became a sharp cry, now or never. Daniel grabbed the final strand, forcing it into place. As the first guard reached him, a shockwave of light burst from the sphere, throwing the guards back, their weapons scattering across the crystal floor. The crowd screamed or shouted in voices layered over each other, the alien leader staggering back under the force, but never taking his eyes off Daniel. The maze of light dissolved, leaving the sphere cracked wider than before, the seams glowing with white light, so bright it hurt to look at. From the heart of the sphere another object rose, this one larger than the shard, a ring made of the same deep black core, surrounded by swirling gold energy. It hovered before Daniel, spinning slowly, its light tracing patterns across his face. The voice returned, calmer, now the second key is yours, but its weight will be heavier than the first. Daniel reached out, the ring sliding onto his wrist. The moment it touched his skin, the weight was real, pulling at him as though connected to something vast and far away. The sphere dimmed again, but did not close its glow, now like the steady heartbeat of something waiting in the dark. The alien leader moved forward through the fading haze of light, his voice low but carrying through the hall. You think you are in control, human, but the moment the last lock opens, control will belong to nothing you know. Daniel said nothing. His focus on the heat and weight of the ring, his mind filled with the rhythm of the shard, and the maze still pulsing in his bones. Around them the hall was chaos, the scientists arguing with each other over readings and patterns, the guards regaining their footing, their eyes shifting between Daniel and the alien leader, the crowd pushing toward the lower tiers to see more, as though drawn by the light. Despite their fear, the sphere pulsed once more, and the voice whispered to Daniel, "The final lock waits, and when it wakes, it will not be patient." The alien leader gestured sharply, and the guards formed a wall between Daniel and the exits, their weapons ready, their stance a silent warning. The scientists moved in closer, devices raised, but not daring to touch the sphere. Daniel stepped back from the stand, the ring on his wrist glowing faintly, the shard in his palm pulsing in answer. He could feel the pull between them, as if they were parts of the same whole. In the upper tiers, a sound began, low and deep like a drumbeat far away, growing louder. With each passing moment, the crowd fell into uneasy silence, the sound not coming from any speaker or device, but from the very walls themselves. The alien leader looked around, his molten eyes narrowing. "The final lock is stirring." Daniel knew, without needing the voice to confirm it, that the drumbeat was a call from beyond the seals. The black shape in the image had heard it, and was answering. His hands curled at his sides, the heat from the shard and the ring merging into a single throb through his entire body. The voice spoke one last time before fading. "Hold fast, Daniel, the chain is almost complete." The deep drumbeat rolled through the alien hall like the slow steps of something massive, each note carrying a weight that seemed to sink into the bones of every being present. The crystal walls shimmered faintly, as if the sound was not only in the air, but in the structure itself. Daniel stood unmoving, his eyes locked on the sphere before him, the shard in his palm and the ring on his wrist pulsing together with the same heavy rhythm. The alien leader's molten gaze was fixed on him, but there was no order to attack this time, only the same cautious stillness of a predator watching something it cannot yet name. The sphere began to shift again, its cracked surface widening, the seams spilling light so bright it painted the floor in shifting patterns like rivers of fire, the heat rising with each breath, the air heavy enough to make it hard to move. The guards held their ground, but their weapons lowered slightly, their eyes reflecting the light like glass. The scientists leaned forward, devices trembling in their hands, readings spiking into levels their instruments had never touched before. The crowd in the upper tiers was silent now, as if the sound had frozen them in place. Daniel could feel the pull deep inside, as though the chain the voice had spoken of was tightening, the weight of the ring dragging at his wrist, the heat of the shard burning through his palm. Yet there was no pain, only a sense of inevitability. The voice returned, but it was different now, stronger and louder, not whispering, but resonating in his thoughts. "Daniel, the final lock is waking, and once it opens, nothing can return to how it was. This is the moment. You must choose, stand aside, and it will break without a guide, or take the lock and bind it to you." The sphere's light surged upward, shooting a beam into the high ceiling of the hall. The beam fractured into 1,000 smaller strands of light that rained down like molten threads, each one vanishing before it touched the floor. Daniel stepped forward, his boots striking the crystal with soft echoes. The guards did not block him. They only watched, as if something unseen held them back. The alien leader's voice cut across the air, low but sharp. "If you do this, human, you will not control what follows. You will serve it." Daniel did not answer, his focus entirely on the shifting panels of the sphere. The final lock was not like the others. There was no clear puzzle, no visible pattern, only the slow turning of pieces that revealed flashes of deep darkness between the seams. The voice said, "The final lock is not solved, it is accepted. Reach into the dark and let it take you, or turn away and let another face it later, but know that it will come." The heat pressed against his skin as he placed both hands on the sphere, light curling around his fingers like living flame. He pushed, and the panels turned easily beneath his touch, the darkness between them widening until it seemed to pull at him, drawing him, and shapes began to move within that dark, shapes too large to understand, their edges shifting as if they were not bound to one form. His breath caught not from fear, but from the sheer immensity of what he felt beyond the lock. The alien leader took a step forward, but the moment his foot touched the light, a shockwave rippled outward, forcing him back. The guards staggered, the scientists shielded their eyes. The crowd in the upper tiers cried out. The sphere's heartbeat quickened, the light flashing in time with the drumbeat, until both merged into a single relentless rhythm. Daniel felt it in his chest, in his bones, in his thoughts, the chain tightening, the pull absolute. The voice was now part of the rhythm, not separate from it. Daniel, you are the last link. Take the lock. The darkness flared, and from within it something emerged, not fully stepping through, but pressing against the seam, a form of light and shadow, its outline shifting between shapes that might have been humanoid and others that were not. Its presence filled the hall like a tide, the air heavy enough to bend the knees of those closest to it. The alien leader's molten eyes narrowed, but he did not speak. This time, Daniel reached deeper, his fingers passing through the surface of the sphere into the darkness beyond. It was cold at first, so cold it burned. Then it wrapped around his hands like a current, pulling him forward. He felt himself leaning into it, the shard in his palm flaring, the ring on his wrist tightening until it felt like it might merge into his skin. The form within the dark moved closer until its face, or what might have been a face, was only inches from his own. In that moment the voice spoke, not in words, but in something deeper, a recognition of the chain complete of the lock passing into his keeping, of a bond forged between the human and what lay beyond the seals. The darkness surged forward, and with it a rush of light, flooding the hall. The shockwave knocked the nearest guards to the floor. The scientists were thrown back. The alien leader braced himself against the force. The crowd gasped under the weight of it. When the light faded, the sphere was gone, the stand empty, the air still glowing faintly from the heat. Daniel stood in the same place, but the shard was gone from his palm, and the ring had vanished from his wrist. In their place, a mark burned into the skin of his forearm, a swirling chain of light that faded into his flesh. The alien leader took a slow step toward him, his molten eyes locked on the mark. You have taken it. Daniel looked down at the mark, his breathing steady. The weight was still there, not in his hand, but deeper in his mind. The pull toward the thing beyond the seals, constant and unbreakable. The voice was quiet now, but still present, waiting for him to move. The alien leader stopped a few paces away, his tone careful. You have bound yourself to it, human, whether by choice or by trick. It no longer matters. The question now is what you will do when it calls. The hall was silent again, the crowd frozen in their seats, the guards holding position, but not advancing, the scientists whispering among themselves, already imagining what they might do with this new knowledge. Daniel turned his gaze from the alien leader to the high ceiling above, the faint strands of light still hanging there like the last traces of a storm. He knew the choice had been made the moment he touched the sphere. The chain was his, and the end of it waited in the dark. The voice spoke once more, a single word that was both a command and a promise. Soon the hall was still heavy with the aftershock of light and sound, the echoes of the release lingering in the crystal walls like a memory that refused to fade. Daniel stood in the center, his eyes adjusting to the dimmer glow that followed the storm. The mark on his forearm still warmed, the chain of light faint but alive beneath his skin. The alien leader had not moved from where he stood, his molten eyes unblinking, as if waiting for something more to happen. The crowd above held their breath in rows of silent tension, their faces caught between fear and fascination. The guards kept their distance, now their weapons lowered though not forgotten. The scientists whispered in frantic tones, their devices humming with the residue of the energy they had recorded. Daniel could feel the pull again, not from the sphere, for the sphere was gone, but from somewhere far beyond the walls, beyond the council hall, beyond the world itself. It was a steady current threading through his mind, through his bones, as if the space between him and whatever waited beyond the seals had been folded until they were almost touching. The voice came quietly now, not the roaring force of the final lock, but the same steady presence from before. Daniel, the path is open, but the gate is not yet crossed. It will call to you soon, and when it does you must answer, no matter where you stand or what binds you here. He did not speak aloud, though part of him wanted to demand answers. The alien leader's gaze never left him, and Daniel knew any word spoken now would be taken as a confession of intent. A shift passed through the hall, a faint vibration underfoot that was not from the structure, but from something beneath, or perhaps above it. Daniel felt his vision tighten, the space around him dimming, until the alien council, the guards, the crowd, all seemed far away, as though he stood in a tunnel of shadow and light. The voice deepened not in tone, but in presence. Daniel, see what you have taken, and what has taken you. The darkness swelled in front of him, not like before when it had pressed against the sphere, but as a window, a tear in the air itself, stretching wide enough for him to see through it. Beyond lay the shape from the visions, the vast black presence moving through the cold void, its form shifting in ways the eye could not follow, edges melting and reforming, as though it were made from the night between stars. It did not speak with sound, yet he knew it was aware of him. Its attention was a weight heavier than any chain. The mark on his arm burned, and the chain of light flared brighter, as if reacting to the thing beyond the tear. The voice was no longer in his head, but everywhere in the space around him, layered deep, as if thousands spoke in unison. You carry the keys, human, you open the path, and now you are bound to it. Your kind was not meant for this, but your hands were the ones that reached. Daniel's breath was steady, though his chest felt tight. He could not tell if the presence was threat or promise, only that it was vast, and that it was patient but not endlessly. So behind him, faint and distant, he could still hear the council chamber, the murmurs of the crowd, the quiet steps of the guards, the alien leader's voice speaking to someone in low tones. Yet the tear before him held him fast. The presence moved closer, though distance seemed meaningless in that place. One moment it was far as a galaxy, the next it was so near. He could feel the air tremble around him. Its shifting edges revealed glints of gold and silver, as if pieces of stars had been caught in its form. Its voice, or perhaps its thought, rolled through him. You will guide the opening, you will choose which world see me, and which remain blind. You will decide if I walk among them, or if I remain in the dark. Yet if you choose to keep me bound, the chain will not break until your final breath. Daniel felt the heat of the mark fade into a steady warmth, his mind racing with questions, but the presence offered none of its own answers. Instead it lingered, as if waiting for him to understand something that could not be said in words. The tear flickered the edges of it, shivering like a flame caught in wind. The voice whispered from everywhere and nowhere, soon the call will come, and when it does, no wall, no law, no chain, but mine will stop you. The vision faded, the hall returning in a blink, though the air still carried the weight of what had passed. The alien leader's eyes were locked on him, sharper than before, his tone quiet but edged. You have seen it, I can see it in your face. Daniel met his gaze. Without speaking, the leader stepped closer, lowering his voice, so only Daniel could hear. It is older than every star we charted, and there's a reason it was locked away. If you bring it here, nothing will stand against it, not your people, not mine. Daniel felt the chain within him pulse once, as if in answer to the warning. He turned his gaze away from the leader to the crystal walls of the hall, the faint patterns of light still drifting across them from the release above. The crowd began to stir again, voices rising with questions, with demands. The scientists called for readings to be shared. The guards shifted restlessly, as if uncertain whether they should protect the human or contain him. The leader lifted his head, and his voice filled the hall. This session is over. The human will remain under watch until the council decides. Daniel said nothing as two guards moved to stand at his sides. They did not touch him, but their presence was heavy. The mark on his arm pulsed once more before fading to near invisibility. The voice in his mind was silent, yet the sense of connection remained steady, the pull constant, as though a thread tied him to something waiting just beyond the edge of sight. He knew the call would come, and when it did, he would not be able to ignore it. As the crowd began to file out of the hall, the alien leader turned away his cloak of dark glass, catching the last light. In hard reflections, the scientists lingered, casting glances at Daniel, as though trying to read the mark beneath his sleeve. The guards kept their place, but did not speak. Daniel stood still, letting the noise fade around him, his thoughts returning to the shifting shadow in the tear, to the weight of its attention, to the promise and the warning, bound in the same voice. Somewhere deep in the hall's structure, the faint vibration began again, slower this time, like a heartbeat settling into rest. Daniel looked down at his arm, the mark faint, but there, the chain hidden beneath his skin. The choice not yet made, but waiting. The voice's last word echoing in his mind with the certainty of a vow soon